The chair, Kim Leon, to start today's debate.
All right, I'd like to call this House to order. To begin with the debate, I'd like to call upon the Prime Minister, Kang Gi-jung, to the podium.
Does it work? Yes, but I'm not going to use it anyways. I'm sorry, no offense, I'm just kidding. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final round of 2009 Spring KNC. My time. No, thank you. Anyways, now, with that said, I would like to directly move on to what I'm going to do during my 7 minutes that I finally got to change the world in the final rounds. Yay! So, basically, I'm going to talk about the status quo of the situation, then move on to defining the motion we are going to talk about today, and then provide our stance, our arguments, team split, and talk about the first constructive part of our team case. So, basically, what are we going to talk about today? Our motion, this House will disapprove dignified death. We will define this House as the global community. We will not specify it to a certain region nor country. And disapproving will mean illegalizing. And dignified death will mean a lethal injection into the patient's body with the intention to kill. So, our basic stance today is that government-assisted suicide is never justifiable. So, we have four basic arguments in our constructive case. The first is that it is difficult to prove the will. The second is about the legality. And the third is the fact that we have an alternative. And the fourth, that it sends a wrong message to the society. I will talk about the first two constructive arguments, and my next ace speaker will talk about the third and fourth arguments. So, moving on to number one. It is actually difficult to prove the will of the patient. First, I would like to divide the proving the will part into two parts. The first is when the patient is actually conscious, and second, when the patient is unconscious. To begin with, when the patient is conscious, well, it's kind of very difficult for the patient himself to know whether if he is willing to die or not. Especially regarding the fact that when you're under extreme pain, you really want to die. You really want to tell someone to actually go there and kill you by injecting something. However, when you're not under that much pain, when you just suddenly think that you can actually endure the pain and you would like to see your family for another day, for another week, and you would like to see the grandchildren of your grandchildren or whatsoever, well, you suddenly change your mind. So, how are we going to actually prove the will? How are we going to actually find out if the person really wants to die? If and when he changes his opinion every day or every hour or every minute? We can't. And that's why we are not going to allow dignified death. Also, furthermore, there are other reasons that the person wants to die. Of course, we all agree that the person should want to die or should be killed when he is willing to, based on his own benefits. However, they have to consider a lot of things when you're in a hospital, especially regarding the fact that you have plenty of time to do nothing with. Well, you think of so many things, and it hinders your decision. For instance, when you think that you're becoming a burden to your family, when you think that you're becoming too much of money and you're becoming just a fat person sitting in bed doing nothing, well, you might want to die. However, that should not be the reason why someone would want to be killed, especially by dignified death. And furthermore, moving on to the unconscious part. Well, when you're unconscious, well, things get a lot more complicated. And when you're unconscious, two main players actually decide whether you live or die. The first player is actually your family. Your family gets to say if that person should live or die. However, when the family decides, well, please, thank you. Well, it's very difficult. You have to listen if you want to rebut. Anyways, it's very difficult to find out if the family is really loyal to that patient's interest. If the family is only regarding the patient's interest, which we believe should be the one and only reason considered in this decision. If that person is really becoming a burden, an economic burden, a moral or mental burden, well, the family might just say, let's just kill him and get rid of him, and then we can have our own happy lives. Well, of course, I wouldn't do that, but some might, and if some might do it, we shouldn't let them. No, thank you, sir. And well, moving on to the second player, the hospital. Well, if the patient is sitting in bed for like 2 years and the family doesn't really appear, and well, they're really sick of that patient, they need some room, and they want a lot of new patients who are really actually willing to pay and capable of paying, well, they'll just say, let's just kill that patient by injecting something, a lethal injection, and we'll just say that he wanted it, or she wanted it, and well, we'll prove it, well, who knows? Anyways, let's just do it. And we say that's not something we should do. That's not something we should legally allow. Now, moving on to the legality of today's motion. Well, we say that the moral principle of law is to protect every life within the country, and the government has a moral burden to protect its citizens. Now, especially regarding the fact that suicide itself is legally not allowed, which means that it's illegal, well, the government should not legalize something that is currently and will illegalize. For instance, when I try to jump off a building, when I actually try to jump off this podium, not from this podium, it's not that high. But anyways, if I try to jump off from a building because I lost in the final rounds of KNC, well, someone's gonna come here so you better let me win. Anyways, so someone's gonna come there and try to prevent me from jumping off that building. And especially a policeman has the legal bonding to do that burden. Why? Because I'm going to commit something illegal. And because the police and the government has to stop that person from committing something illegal, or they're going to prevent it. And so we say it's first illegal to pass this motion. And also, murder is illegal. Of course we do, well, not we, but I also do understand that it will create a job that killers or serial killers will love to do, pushing the buttons, killing people, and they can enjoy their lives doing whatever they want illegally. However, we say that allowing another person to take another person's life is something that is detrimental and morally something that we should not allow. Well, it's almost 6 minutes and you only asked one POI, so no POIs? Okay, you were late. Okay, quick.
So, are they ignoring the problems where the families don't have money and where incurable diseases? Are you saying that we should keep them alive as well?
Okay, good point. And that point will be solved in a couple minutes when my GPM comes up with our alternative. Okay, yay! So I answered your POI in like 15 seconds. But anyways, so basically, what have I proved to you? Please, it's a serious debate. It's a finals. Okay, so what have I proven to you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speakers, and ladies and gentlemen? Well, I have proven to you that we should not, and we will not pass this motion basically because of four reasons, and I've mentioned the two. What were they? First, it is difficult to prove the will, whether that patient is willing to die or whether the people who decide that person will die or live or die are actually willing that person to die with good intent. And secondly, because it is illegal. So, we strongly propose, and I hope you enjoy our great debate and our great finals. Thank you!
48 seconds.
Okay, thank you very much for your speech. I'd like to now call upon the leader of opposition to the podium.
Every journey has its departure, and only the traveler has the privilege to choose if in the last moment he or she could choose that if she's going to be in the journey or not. So why to die? Because at sometimes, Mr. and Madam Speakers, because there's no return, and you know the end is going to be brutal, and there's going to be no successful for the ones you love. In those certain circumstances, we believe that actually killing a dignified death is the best path for your journey. This is what we firmly believe as the opposition side, Mr. and Madam Speakers. As the first speaker of the opposition side, I would like to first point about their issues on their arguments and then propose our counter-proposal, which will contribute to our debate, then move on to our constructive arguments. It is really, I don't understand. He's a great speaker. However, when it comes to euthanasia, yeah, it's great for you, but when it comes to euthanasia, Mr. and Madam Speaker, it's important to realize the importance of debate. When it comes to life and death issues, we believe as the opposition, we should not joke about it. We should certainly consider the amount of deals about it. So even though I don't joke about it, please bear with me. As the first, they first come out and say it's difficult to rule out the death, who wants to die or not. But through our counter-proposal, we will show you how we're going to discriminate those people who want to die or not. Secondly, their legality. We'll show you how legal procedures can be adopted on our counter-proposal. And we ask for, since they're vague standards, we ask for actually, how are they going to regulate such exceptions or possible when it comes to incurable disease? And they have alternative. But as the proposition side, if they wanted such problems, they just did it in the first speaker. And since we have nothing to rebut about it, we'll move on to our case. Our stance is we believe that it is important to have a quality of life. And it's important that you give the person the right to die with dignity. Our basis is the European Declaration of Human Rights, which we consider people, we don't want the person to suffer if he doesn't want to. We're not going to let him alive when he wants to die and suffer in pain, because you're not that person. Who are you to judge that he needs to die or not when he's the one who's suffering? So to our counterproposal, I'll go point by point. First, we'll make the legal procedures for this. First, we'll make this passive euthanasia under 3 circumstances. First, we're going to have the patient's request. Whenever you have a medical checkup, whenever you have an insurance problem, we're going to make a small box for you. You could go for it or not. And it will say, if you're in a coma, in a status, when you're not able to do anything, and you're just simply alive, if you want to die, you can sign for it. If not, you can't. And since you do medical checkups, if you change your mind in the later future, you could just discard it. It's simple as that. This is what we're trying to do. Secondly, we'll get the doctor's consent. Not only the physical doctor, but the mental doctor, Madam Speaker. Since life is so important, we're going to get both the physical doctor and the mental doctor. And if you're designated to be incurable, and if your status are so incurable and the status are so bad, no, we'll let you have the right to die. And the third and last standard of euthanasia, we believe, injected legal things, would be the lawful representative, which would be your family members or friends that is designated by the government and recognized from the government. Under 3 standards we propose today, Mr. and Madam Speakers and dear audiences, these are the sheer counter-proposal we propose, and only by these legal procedures we say we can kill people because life is so important. We agree that life is important, but without such procedures, it's not going to work. So move on to my first argument. We'll talk about the quality of life. Think about yourselves in a hospital, Mr. and Madam Speaker, and simply say the only thing you can work is you can see people. You can't even say hi to the ones you love. And you're staying alone in the patient room. And for my case, I'm a guy. Since when a woman nurse comes on and she changes my clothes, she takes care of my, excuse my language, shits, and also my pains, and it will be so humiliating to be alive itself, Mr. and Madam Speaker. What in those cases? Do I have to suffer that pain even when I don't want to? Just because the government regulates I have to be alive? That's not the one we're trying to promote in the first place, Mr. and Madam Speaker. And also, we have another example. If your body parts are all burned, and you have nothing to do else, you're relying on painkillers, and you're relying on some artificial mechanicals to actually keep you alive. And in those cases, when even your families, when your families are so poor, you can't consider your economic status, and you don't have the money to actually be in the hospital itself. What are the situations those days? And you just have your eyes open. You know your family can't help you, and you don't want your families to actually suffer. So what we're trying to say is that by not being alive, you can actually improve your quality of life. Because we're all human beings, and quality of life is important. Just because you're living doesn't mean you're living. That's the stand of the opposition. Yes?
So in that point, then he's not exercising his right for his own will to live, because he's considering too many external factors.
I guess you didn't listen to my counter proposal. We'll do it under the circumstance if the patient wants it. And if he doesn't want to. That's as simple as that. Also, my second speaker will talk about how it may ruin the quality of life of the living, such as family members and so many other people that will be hurt by just being simply alive. By the quality of life may be vague to you guys, but however, if you consider the pain that the patient gets, the humiliation, and when when your family members are actually suffering, but you can't do nothing about it because you can't say even a word, those are the circumstances we want you to consider. We're not saying we're going to kill off every people as the first speaker said. No, that's not what we're trying to promote today, Mr. Madam Speaker. We're talking about the situation when you're incurable, when you don't have the money, and you don't want to suffer, and you don't want your loved ones to be actually suffering in the same pain as you are. This is when we're actually trying to save the lives of people. Those qualities of lives, under the basis that humans have to enjoy their lives. Just living is not living. So what I'm going to talk to you today, Mr. Madam Speaker, I first talked about their proposition sides. They say it's difficult to rule or not. Well, while they're conscious, We could say simply get the agreement or not. But for those who are already unconscious, we say we can't kill them because life is so important. If he miraculously comes up and be alive and we can get his agreement, yes, we will kill him. But however, if we don't get his agreement, we will not kill him because life is so important. However, if we do medical checkups from our counter proposal, under those circumstances, we are allowing a legality, a moral reason, and a legal reason to actually kill those guys off. So we gave you a counter proposal where we're going to have the patient's rights, when we have to get the doctor's consent, and a lawful representative. Under these conditions, we can improve the quality of life, not only by our or the patient's life, but will be elaborated from a second beautiful speaker, that the quality of life of the family members will be worth. She's pretty to me, sorry. Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to introduce the Deputy Prime Minister to the podium.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before I move on to any kind of substantial details of today's debate and any kind of debatters, I'd like to do one thing. Yes, at the very beginning of their speech, they came up here and this weird analogy about them being the only one who can choose what is good for themselves at the end of the whole voyage, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, if I am the person, first of all, I wouldn't want to be pushed to the cliff, ladies and gentlemen. I would want other person to decide what is good for me, even when I'm not conscious, for example, ladies and gentlemen. Second of all, even if I'm conscious and I decide at one moment that I want to live, and at the other moment that I do not want to live, I do not want be myself. I cannot trust myself to actually tell them to put a lethal injection to me, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want those kind of life, and so to the side, sooner than ladies and gentlemen, today's debate. Now, before I move on to any kind of substantial details in today's debate, let's look at a few debatters, ladies and gentlemen. We had many three debatters to do because they didn't actually do a lot to actually attack our case, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let's look at the whole legal procedure they mentioned, a counter proposal, so-called, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, they say it will be done by the patient's request. Mainly, there are 2 points of refutation to this argument, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, as our brilliant Prime Minister has clearly mentioned, when people are in the point of near death, ladies and gentlemen, they simply cannot make a logical conclusion that is the best suited for themselves, ladies and gentlemen. Now, second point of reputation, ladies and gentlemen, is thank you. Please listen. Second point of reputation is even when I'm not conscious, ladies and gentlemen. It is not up to the patient, but it's actually up to the patient family to decide whether I should live or die, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I love my family, but I wouldn't be able to trust them if I lie in the bed for 10 years. Sorry, if I lie in the bed for 10 years and they are thinking me as a burden, not as one part of their family, ladies and gentlemen. Second of all, they mentioned that there will be a doctor's consent, ladies and gentlemen. But as our brilliant Prime Minister clearly articulated, possible abuses can and do happen, ladies and gentlemen. In the United States, not in the United States, but in the country, Netherlands, where I forgot the name of the country, but in one country that euthanasia is quite illegal in the state school, there has been repeated abuse of doctors, ladies and gentlemen. Only because the patients have been lying there for 10 years with no one paying for it, only a minimal amount to pay for it. Doctors just want to clear the room for another patient, ladies and gentlemen. And this kind of abuse can and do happen even in the state school, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you. Second of all, they all came up with this, again, a weird analogy of himself having a pretty nurse doing something for him. And he doesn't want to suffer those kind of pain, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, most people who get lethal injection are the ones in coma, ladies and gentlemen, as our Prime Minister has clearly pointed out. Second of all, even if you are conscious, our minds are mainly judged by other kinds of external factors, ladies and gentlemen, not for their own good, ladies and gentlemen. in the place where the government should be the one who actually cares about the actual individual person's right to pursue the happiness, ladies and gentlemen, we say that their argument goes nowhere to standing to expect, ladies and gentlemen. So although they mentioned the economic status and how patients' family wouldn't be able to afford so expensive medical fees, ladies and gentlemen, but listen carefully to the counter proposal that I'm going to do in about 30 seconds. Not counter proposal, but the alternative proposal that I'm going to do in about 30 seconds. There will be no more burden, less of a burden, no thank you. It actually takes quite a lot of money to do the lethal injection. I'm going to further elaborate in my substantive argument, ladies and gentlemen. Now, now that I've debated the ordinary argument, let's move into substantive point of today's debate. Now, my brilliant Prime Minister has elaborated on, first, how this actually goes against the patient's will, and second, how government does have a responsibility to protect its own citizens based on legal decisions. Now, to further elaborate on our theme line that the government-assisted suicide is not justified under any circumstances, we have to broaden our scope of today's debate by, first, looking at the alternative of national hospice, ladies and gentlemen, and second, by looking at how government-assisted suicide, assisted suicide is going to open the floodgate of other problems by sending a wrong message to society, ladies and gentlemen. We on the side proposition is going to provide a clear alternative. But before we hear that, what do you have to say about this?
All those points rebuttals made by the proposition side, if you follow our positions, doctrinal abuses will not happen because we have the three standards, and patients' logical decisions will not.
Sir, please sit down. I got your point. Even at the Cisco, in countries where euthanasia is illegal, ladies and gentlemen, those kind of process are already there, ladies and gentlemen. But what do we see in the Cisco? No, thank you. There are abuses going on even at the Cisco. Now, ladies and gentlemen, beyond the side proposition is going to provide a clear alternative to government-assisted suicide, aka euthanasia, which is a national hospice, ladies and gentlemen. What is this hospice? For some people who might not know what hospice is an alternative on euthanasia, a place a patient near death comes in and to live the rest of their lives with the care of special nurses, doctors, and counselors, ladies and gentlemen. These hospices are not our SNUDA's own invention, although we hope it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is already being done in some countries like United States, France, Germany, Netherlands, and other kinds of nations, ladies and gentlemen. It is already working fine system, ladies and gentlemen. And it has proved to be successful, as in the case of in many European nations. According to NIH's survey regarding NIH, National Institute of Health of the United States, survey regarding near-death patients, although I don't remember the exact number, more than 70% of the patients in hospice believe that they had benefited from the care of the nurses, and especially from the counseling from the counselors, ladies and gentlemen. What we want to propose in today's debate as an alternative for euthanasia is establishing a national hospice for these people, ladies and gentlemen. It is beneficial in many two ways. First of all, currently lethal injection is quite expensive, but they do not realize this fact, ladies and gentlemen. It's so expensive that countries like Sudan, Somalia, and African nations cannot actually do the lethal injection to even the murderers. They have to shoot them because bullet is so much cheaper than lethal injections, ladies and gentlemen. However, national hospice, which do not be as luxurious as other luxurious hospices already at the Cisco, can be partly subsidized, ladies and gentlemen, giving less burden to the patients. Second, these patients who are near death will be able to fulfill their last moment with the programs and counseling done by what hospice offers, ladies and gentlemen, with least pain possible, with more than average amount of painkillers provided to them, ladies and gentlemen. This, without having a condoned murder, ladies and gentlemen, is much more humane, first, and it will be less of a burden to the patients as well, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to the last part of today's debate, how does it actually send a wrong message to international society, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, look at the first domestic society. First, this kind of message sends a message that it's okay to kill yourself, which is detrimental to the morals of our society, people, ladies and gentlemen. Second of all, we know that there are some people who are going to oppose this thing based on religious principle, their own values, ladies and gentlemen, and social unrest might occur in this respect, as it has occurred in Netherlands, ladies and gentlemen. Second of all, to the international community, it sends a message that the government of individual nation actually condones these people taking their own lives away, ladies and gentlemen. This directly contradicts the government's law of protecting people. Ladies and gentlemen, if these messages are sent to every nation around the world, as we have clearly defined, we see it is quite a problematic, ladies and gentlemen. Or in order, ladies and gentlemen, where does this debate boil down to? It boils down to mainly two questions. First of all, whether this hospice that we have offered is better than their counter-proposal, ladies and gentlemen. It is clearly so, because their counter-proposal is no different from the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. Second of all, does these people have the right mind of logical thinking when they decide what's good for themselves? And the obvious answer to the question is no. And how can we not pass this motion? Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the side of the opposition side, Mr. Speaker, we want to secure the quality of life of the patients, and also we want to secure the right to die with dignity. And this is a clear stance from the beginning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a patient where there is no possibility of recovery, there is no prospect of improvement, and there was a concept of himself, the concept of the medical doctors, both physical and psychological. And there was a consent from your family members, your lawful representatives. What's the problem with acting out this euthanasia with dignified death, Mr. Speaker? What's wrong with this? Mr. Speaker, according to our counter-proposal, Mr. Speaker, we solve the problems that the proposition side has mentioned. First of all, the difficult to prove whether they want to have euthanasia or not. Mr. Speaker, we have said that, first of all, we have to need consent of the patient themselves. And we are going to please sit down. We are going to have these consents by each and every medical checkups they are going to take. And also, they have said that they might make a logical decision when they're going to die. However, Mr. Speaker, because of these reasons, we have three standards for this. Not only for their own consent, there will be their medical and physical doctor to say that there is no possibility of recovery. And thirdly, their representatives, their lawful representatives, Mr. Speaker, their family members, or if they're parents, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, there are two arguments. The first one, difficult to prove, that is solved by our counter-proposal. Second of all, the legality, because it's a consent of themselves, the doctors and the lawful representatives. Because of these three standards we have given you by our counter-proposal, these two arguments are crashed. Yes, what's your point?
Haven't you clearly proved the reason that these patients might not act the best for himself because of the external factors?
Mr. Speaker, we do not think that there isn't any external factors, Mr. Speaker. Every time as you go to medical checkups each year, do you have any external pressure, Mr. Speaker, for your family's burden? We do not think so, Mr. Speaker. It's reliable on your choice, every medical checkup. And if you decide not to do so, you can change every and each medical checkup, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, their two arguments does not stand. I would like to go on to rebut to the third argument which they have brought up, which was hospice. Mr. Speaker, I have volunteered in a hospice for my church, and I've seen for myself those people who are dying out. They know it's like death penalty. They know that they're going to die in some moment, but they can't die because they're just in a hospice. However, Mr. Speaker, I saw how they felt, and I saw their eyes. They simply did not wanted to die. They did not want to stay in that condition, Mr. Speaker. Even if the nurses, they sing, they 찬송ing for them. However, they do not listen, Mr. Speaker. They think that is all crap because they don't like this condition for them, Mr. Speaker. And we believe that the hospice, they mentioned that it's much cheaper. However, it is not, Mr. Speaker. And we believe that the economic burdens on the poor would not be solved by this. Please sit down. Okay. And also, for the last rebuttal, the wrong message. Mr. Speaker, assisted suicide is legalized in Oregon, Washington, Montana, Albania, Luxembourg, and also euthanasia is legalized in Netherlands and Belgium. And also, Switzerland don't punish doctors who perform euthanasia. What this proves, Mr. Speaker, is that they want to secure the quality of life. They want to secure the patient's right to die with dignity. Therefore, they legalize this, and this supports our argument, Mr. Speaker. Now, going on to my constructive case, Mr. Speaker, the quality of ruining of the family, Mr. Speaker. Not only the rights of the patients is violated by this, but also the family's burden is violated too, Mr. Speaker. It's we can divide this into two spheres. First, economically, and second, mentally. First of all, economically. We have seen that euthanasia 말고 okay, not euthanasia, but these sorry. Okay. In the United States, we see that health insurance is not provided. It's not automatically given to you, and it's not a given right to you, Mr. Speaker. And it takes massive amount of money for you to go into this kind of medication, Mr. Speaker. And we believe that if you keep this patient 1 hour, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, the amount of money you build up is huge. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, what do you think about those desperate people who are suffering from those kind of economic burdens, Mr. Speaker? We believe that that is a huge amount of money for them economically, and because they have signed, the patient have signed to die, they have the concept of themselves, and because of the medical doctors, Mr. Speaker, we believe that the economic burdens will lessen by our counter proposal, Mr. Speaker. And also, I would like to give you a case that happened actually a month ago. Mr. Speaker, there was a person who had, there was a 15-year-old guy, a boy, who has actually committed suicide because her mother did not recover from her coma decision. Mr. Speaker, because 5 years of his mother's unrecovery, Mr. Speaker, he has finally committed suicide. You know, watching your mother, watching your dad, watching your relatives who are suffering from that condition for more than 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, Mr. Speaker, how would you feel about that? Would you feel, well, there might be some chance. However, Mr. Speaker, if it goes on longer and longer, we do not think that will happen. That will make mental hurt feelings for their families, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the quality of the family will decrease, and there will be more family burden on the family, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, what have I talked about today, Mr. Speaker? We believe that there is an act called Michigan Dignified Death Act that says there is a right to accept or refuse any treatment that is offered to you. That applies the same with dignified death, Mr. Speaker. There is a right for you to accept or refuse any treatment. There is a right to choose whether you're going to have a dignified death or not. And we, as the opposition side, we want to promote this in legal aspects and also for the quality of life and for the right to die with dignity, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we should, allowing the patient to continue to live in that state, Mr. Speaker, is a greater evil than causing their death, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we are very proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to call upon the government whip to the podium.
I'm sorry that we have a sense of humor. We weren't trying to joke about the importance of life or death. But something that the opposition doesn't really seem to see here is that euthanasia is actually a very permanent decision. Once you say that you decide to die, and once we actually let them choose to go through with this decision, they can't change their minds anymore. But we probably don't want to nitpick on all the wrong things that they've said. Let me present to you the two issues that I saw in this debate. First of all, who had the better proposal, the more feasible proposal, the more ethical proposal? Second, I'm going to compare the merits of the quality of life versus the actual implications of euthanasia. Without further ado, let me move on to my first issue. First, let's take a look at their counter proposal. First of all, it's inherently flawed. They told us that we're going to have medical checkups every year. And first of all, I can't really understand their system. But I'm going to assume that in the yearly checkups that we get, when the patient goes in, he's going to check that little box that says, in the case that you're brain dead or you're on the point of dying, do you want us to give you euthanasia or not? And he's going to check yes or no. But first of all, the reason why that's flawed is that when you're not at the brink of death, you can't make a decision because you don't know how you're going to react when you're on the brink of death. Second, no, I'm still on your point. You can't judge when you're not on the brink of death. And then second, what if they say yes, then they say no, then they say yes? We say that there's too many loopholes in their whole counter proposal. Because first of all, they're the ones who question who has the right to judge. Then they talk about families choosing euthanasia for the patient. Then they talk about the mental doctor and the physical doctor. What if the mental doctor says the patient's not able to make the decision? And we say, when the patient is under the influence of painkillers, when the patient has so many external factors pressuring him, we say that he can't make a rational decision. That's something that we've been talking about throughout our entire speech, and we've been consistent in showing you. Because we say that patients can't make rational decisions. We ourselves don't really know if we want to live or die. We say that these external factors that actually push us to make this so-called decision have nothing to do with our actual will to live. They actually have to talk. They're actually about the more practical things like economy, etc., which I'll talk about. What do you have to say about that?
So if your doctor says we cannot designate this patient is going to die or not, we're saying simply, since he has a chance to live, we're not going to kill him because life is that important. But if we have the consensus, that is when we can
You still haven't answered my point on how about the fact that they can't make rational decisions? Okay, so no, sit down, you're graduating. So let me talk about this alternative that we actually gave, in which they weren't able to actually rebut. Here's the alternative. We want a national hospice. We believe that this is a better alternative because we've already told you that majority of patients actually benefit from this sort of system. And we say that because lethal injection is expensive, it's not going to be a luxurious system. We say that the cost effectiveness is actually proven. We say that the only rebuttal they were able to give to that is that it's too expensive. But we say that because there's going to be government subsidy, it's not going to be that much of a burden to these families to begin with. No, sit down. And we say, and here's where the actual will of the patient comes in my second issue, about the quality of life versus the actual implications. We on the government side aren't sadistic, but we do want to preserve the patient's own will to live. Here are the external factors that affect the patient, something that their second speaker talked about for her entire speech. She actually told us about these economic burdens on the family and on the patients themselves. We say that if the patient feels that he has to choose lethal injection because he's putting a burden on his family, that in itself already violates his right to choose his will to live. Because did he make that decision because he really wants to live, or did he make that decision because he doesn't want to burden his family? Second, although we concede to the fact that the patient is influenced by economic conditions, we say that they can't make this rational decision about their own will if they're too over concentrated on their family's economic burden or whatsoever. And then they gave us this really weird example about this 15-year-old who committed suicide because he watched his mom, etc., etc. If the families are so affected by having a patient in their family, would they even choose to euthanize this patient in the first place? Because we say that that's going to cause the same amount of trauma to them anyway. So we say that whole thing didn't even make sense. Now let me talk about abuse of the hospitals. They've been telling us that there are checks and balances in the system. You know what? There aren't. Because both of us have to concede to the point that no one in this world is morally good. Okay? We have to concede to the fact that human nature can sometimes be evil. And these hospitals, no matter what they say, aren't there just to save lives. They're also there to make profit. And we say that these hospitals will abuse this system. They weren't able to defend that. Sit down. You're badgering. They weren't able to defend this abuse, which is happening in status quo. Because we say that any hospital which has this burden of taking care of a patient that can't even pay for their that isn't economically able to pay for his hospital fees, we say that hospital is going to be the one, because they're going to take advantage of this patient when he's feeling weak and he says, I want to die. Then he's going to be like, we have the patient's consent. We're going to let him die. So basically, I'm telling you about the abuse of the hospital. But before that, let me move on to the chunk of the Deputy Prime Minister's argument, something that they didn't even touch. It's about the message that we send to society and the international community. We say that, first of all, what kind of message do you send? And what kind of message, and this ties in with legality as well, what kind of message does the government send when it condones government-assisted suicide? We say that, first of all, in the domestic sense. How does this exactly boost the morale of the people? Because it directly contradicts what the government is there for. Because the government is there to protect the people's rights. But sit down, not taking any more POIs. But as I've already proved to you in my first issue, they haven't been able to prove to us how we're actually going to know that the will of the person is truly to live or truly to die. We've already told you that there are too many external factors. But second, the kind of message that it sends to the entire society and the global community. We see that the government basically is condoning people taking away their own lives. Where's the legality in that? Because when we say, why is it that governments don't allow suicide? Fine, if my life is in shambles and I'm in debt and my husband left me and I have like 10 kids to feed, then why is it that I can't commit suicide then? We say that that's the basis of their logic. Because we say that it's morally unethical for governments to tell people that it's okay for you to kill yourself because your life sucks. We say that it's not something that's exclusive only to medical euthanasia. But in second, we say that government has this moral responsibility to uphold the morality of people and tell people the idea is that you have to respect your own will to live. Like we said, if a policeman sees someone about to jump off a building or whatever, he has the legal right, or if any of us do, he has that legal obligation to stop the person. And we say the government will directly contradict this moral obligation by putting through with such a proposal. So let me sum up to you what I've been speaking about for the past 7 minutes. I've told you about how our alternative makes much more sense than their counter-proposal, which wasn't even properly elaborated on, makes no sense. And second, I talked to you about the quality of life versus the actual implications. They weren't able to tell us how quality of life is so important that it undermines the actual will of the patient. And with that, I beg to propose.
All right, I'd like to introduce the opposition whip.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Madam and Mr. Speaker. I'm really proud and it's my honor to be here as whip speaker. And thank you for watching our debate. Okay, so as a whip speaker, let me begin with my speech by talking about the following order of my speech. First of all, I'll talk about the main and biggest mistake given by this government side. And second, I'll talk about the four arguments given by this government side. Okay. So talk about the biggest main mistake given by the government side. Okay, today, for this debate, I would call this government side as irresponsible and immoral. The reason? We see, and I see, the government side, what the government side is doing is discrimination against these poor and minor patients. So, let me explain about why I believe so. Discrimination. For example, if I want to commit suicide right now, I can go secretly to the building and commit suicide. If there's no one, I can just commit suicide. That is the right. I have this right to commit suicide. However, and they also talked about this legality, which is it's illegal to just let a person die when he tries to commit suicide. However, what the government is trying to do is depriving the right, even the tribe, to commit suicide. They actually deprive the ability to the opportunity of trying to commit suicide. Ladies and gentlemen, is this what the government wants to try? Discrimination against these poor people who does not have ability to commit suicide on themselves. So we actually here to prevent that kind of mistakes. For example, we are here to have this mechanism, having consensus from the family themselves and the doctor. When we have certain people who can prevent them from committing suicide, when they actually think that the patient is actually having this irrational decision. So, reminding the fact that the government is actually depriving the right to commit suicide, right to die with dignity for a person, we are here to oppose this motion. So, talking about these four arguments. First of all, it was since they actually oppose this motion because they cannot prove the willingness of the patient to die or not. And the second one is legality, and third was alternative, and the fourth one was wrong message. Okay, for the first argument, which they said since the people, it's hard to distinguish whether the patient wants to survive or not. We cannot do that. However, ladies and gentlemen, and Madam and Mr. Speaker, doesn't that actually apply to the same position to the government side? What if we don't know that whether the patient was die or not? Then how can you actually say that the patient wants to live or not? Since no one can ensure that, we cannot judge by on their decision. So we have brought this counter proposal, demanding this 3 consensus from legal people related to this patient. And for the second argument about the legality, they say having this patient to be dead because he doesn't want to live is illegal. However, ladies and gentlemen, we are giving the same opportunity as the normal people. Whenever they want to commit suicide, we can give the opportunity to commit suicide while we actually have the people to watch them. Yes, ma'am?
Ma'am, that opportunity to commit suicide is illegal. You just conceded that the legality is wrong.
I'm not saying that legality is wrong. Listen carefully, ma'am. We are actually having the same situation. If there's a policeman who can stop a person from committing suicide, we have these doctors, families, and the other watchers who actually can stop these patients to commit suicide. We are actually having the same position, but the government side is actually depriving the right to commit suicide for the patient. While they have this, while they actually have promote the right to commit suicide for the normal people. So to move on to the third argument, which is really important for this debate, which is alternative. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go back to the very first stage of today's debate. The government side actually set the house as rubber community. Yeah, the global community. Ladies and gentlemen, how invisible is this? They are trying to say, and they want to have this hospice in every country, which, for example, Rwanda, Ghana, or the other third world nations. They don't have enough money to have this hospice, and they actually do not have enough money to sustain these facilities. So then there comes these 2 questions: feasibility, which I just mentioned, and what do we have? Do we have any difference from the past? Do we have any difference by having this hospice? For example, they're saying, okay, since these families are so suffering from this economic burden, while they are neglecting the suffering of the patient, they said, okay, we will have this hospice and let the government to pay for that. What about the other person's tax? Are we supposed to use that tax to the hospice? And what about these developing nations and poor who cannot afford these alternatives? Ladies and gentlemen, because of these alternatives and because of this definition of a house study, we don't see this alternatives is feasible enough and makes any difference. So, to move on to the fourth argument given by this government side, they talked about this wrong message, ladies and gentlemen. However, as I just mentioned about discrimination against this poor who is unable to commit suicide on themselves, we believe the government side is actually giving the wrong message to the world by depriving the right to commit suicide and by depriving the ability to commit suicide, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. and Madam Speaker, today, the opposition wants to actually reserve and prevent this kind of abuse of power because we want to secure the right to commit suicide for these patients who are not able to do that. So, to sum up today's debate, the opposite side actually talked about these 2 arguments, which is quality of life for patients and quality of family's right. In addition, we also talked about the right to die with dignity. However, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we have to look at what the government wants to achieve. The government says, okay, they actually have this vague stance. We don't know what kind of goal they want to achieve. Is that human life? Is the quality of life? Is that economic burden? What are you actually wants to achieve? We want to say they failed to prove that they actually will achieve these 3 goals within their alternatives. However, ladies and gentlemen, the opposition side, we gave this counter proposal which is constructive enough to achieve this economic burden and the quality of life as well as this families' burden. So, ladies and gentlemen, please tell us who is actually winning this debate. Thank you.
8 seconds.
All right, I'd like to introduce the opposition reply.
Believe me, you don't want to see what's inside. Okay. As the last speaker of the opposition side, I would like to first clarify to you guys, to the audiences, to actually see how we won this debate. First, are they actually solving a problem? When it comes to this issue, we should think about the people who are actually suffering from it. Who is suffering from this issue, dear audiences? The people who have incurable diseases, people in coma, people in the families who suffer from such problems, who doesn't have the money to support those problems, and the people who actually care about the family members and believe that they should now no longer suffer from the pain. That is the crucial point that they're neglecting. And as to this debate, it's not solving the problem. Their alternative will not solve any problem at all, Mr. speakers. Secondly, don't be deceived by them. The which speaker comes up and does a creative speech. They talk about suicide, how are you going to solve this problem? They say, worst case scenario, you want to kill yourself, you have a miserable life, you want to kill yourself, or by abusing this law, you're going to do it. But if you listen carefully to our model, that's never going to happen in the first place. If it was so vague for you guys, and to clarify to you guys, we'll once again move on to our 3 standards that we provided as a counter proposal. First of all, we said it's important we have to get the consent from the patient. If he wants to die, he can. But if he doesn't, we're not forcing it, him or not. So that's a legal procedure we're taking. Secondly, we get to need the doctor's consideration for both physical and mental. Thirdly, we need from a lawful representative, such as your family members or friends. By these standards, any other rebuttals, that being abused by doctors will not work because you have your friends and family, and you have both mental and physical doctors. And it will be not abused by illogical decisions because you have your doctor's consent and your friends and family's consent, so it can never be abused in the first place. So I'll go point by point how did they fail to prove their opinions. First, they come up and say it's difficult to prove if they want to die or not. Our model solves that problem. Second, legality. We still solve that problem because the government will legalize it, so we will have no problem at all. Thirdly, there are alternatives, which our WISP speaker did a magnificent job, also pretty, criticizing them. So if there's simply no money, the facilities will take more money and make the devastating people more impossible to stay in life, especially in this economic recession, ladies and gentlemen. Also about the wrong message. If we follow their model, that's when you give a wrong message. When a person really wants to die, and in such circumstances, we're not saying we're going to kill off everybody. No, we have strict procedures. And those people who really want to die because of the necessity, the problems they have, the suffering they have, the pains we have. Since we don't share those problems, it may not seem so touching to you, but I have personally a friend that is lying down. It's a crucial problem that we suffer right now. So we have to acknowledge the problem of that sense, Mr. Anderson. By acknowledging to actually give the right to die, we can actually secure and send a good message to the world. When you want to die and when you need to die, the government will help you make it a safe path to the world. Also, at the end of the day, what we're trying to give you is life. So I defined it in 4 categories. L, life. We both agree that life is important, but if we follow our model, it's going to be much more better. I, ignorance. They never talked about the quality of life, ladies and gentlemen. They never did. I guess they don't care much about it, but we do. Just living is not living. Also, fundamental victims, F, fundamental victims, they don't think about the people in real necessity. Fourthly, economic problems. E, economic problems. Their model is never going to help the economic situation. It's never going to be possible in those countries, even they provide such as Somalia or Vietnam. It's not going to work. So life, ignorance, fundamental victims, and economic are the processes we're trying to do. So at the end of the day, if still you guys believe that we should follow the proper positions model, I would like to ask you guys to dignify my death because I have failed to defend, and I've been a terrible debater, to actually defend the quality of life of my suffering friend and family that is suffering right even at this moment. Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to call upon the last speaker of the grand finals, the government reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, thank you. Well, of course, here I'm going to make something. I do understand the fact that, we're not going to joke with lives. That is something serious. That is something we do concede. So in my reply speech, I will be as gentle as possible, but try my best also to entertain you, because I believe that the burden of the reply speaker, especially in the final debate round as the final speaker of the total debate contest, has the burden not only to make his team win, but also to make sure that you all have an final impression, and to wake everyone up that is sleeping so that they can actually leave and go home. So, to start off, I would like to once again propose to think of two worlds. The Snuda world, and once again, what's your team name? Yeah, okay, the Hanyang world. Okay, I'm really sorry. I think it's Highness, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to just call it the Hanyang world. Anyways, we're going to start off with the Snuda. We're going to once again start off with the Hanyang world, in which they have people have the right to kill themselves if they just have this sudden emotional surge that they just want to die. However, in Snuda world, where we respect all the lives of individuals, and that in which suicide is actually illegal. Now, going back to the Hanyang world, in this world, you have the right to commit a crime if no one's next around you. You have the right to kill yourself, which is actually illegal if no one's around you. However, in Snuda world, we say that illegal actions are illegal whether there's someone to watch you or not. Now, moving on to the Hanyang world once again. In this world, people are regarded useless if you have irreversible disease and you should be killed. And in this world, lonely patients who do not have people to take care of them should be killed. And in this world, murderers have the ideal job in which they can push buttons that make people die and be happy about it. However, in our world, in the Snuda world, we say that every human, even though alive and almost alive, should have the right to live and will live. Also, going back to once again the Hanyang world, in this world, economic factors are considered in killing a person. If you don't have the money, you have to kill that person. However, in the Snuda world, we strongly say that economic purposes should not be considered whether a human should live or die. Now, going back to Hanyang world once again, in the Hanyang world, we have poisoned bodies rolling out of hospitals being injected of very expensive injections. Now, however, on the Snuda world, we have patients, or actually bodies, that have a smile on their face because they're happy with their final moment in the hospices, which we actually proved were not that expensive. Now, once again, on the Hanyang world, they say that on this table, in the Hanyang world, you have to be able to talk with someone else, to communicate with someone else, to actually feel love, to feel emotion. However, in Snuda world, we say that looking at the person in the face is actually enough to feel emotion and to feel the love of the other person. Now, one of the final differences in the Snuda world and the Hanyang world is that in the Hanyang world, the whip gets to bring up new matters, and the reply speaker gets to provide the new criteria of their alternatives. However, that will not happen in the Snuda world. So, the final difference between the two worlds. In Hanyang world, they get to win, and I'll jump off somewhere. And in Snuda world, we win, and we all get to live. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank the audience, the debaters, for a wonderful debate. I'd like the teams to cross the floor, shake hands. Okay, adjudicators, we will be going to room 108, and we will make our decision there.